All right, welcome to week 6. As always, if you're watching this video, it's because you were absent on either one or both of our synchronous days on campus. So this is going to be what we're doing this week. We are going to be turning in these Google Slides week 6, and then in our synchronous days, we're going to be reading all of chapter 12 and then the first part of chapter 15. And for your asynchronous, you're going to need to finish chapter 15. It's a bigger chapter, so that's why I'm splitting it up that way. And then you're going to read chapter 13. You'll notice it's kind of out of order, but it's not going to confuse you at all. He's not going to talk about something that would be in a linear fashion, so it's okay that we're reading it out of order. And we are skipping chapter 14 because we're getting close to the time when we're going to need to turn in our books. And I know some of us have checked out physical copies. So we're going to make some adaptations and be flexible. There's also something called iReady that's right here. If you go onto Canvas, you will see that there's a slide presentation linked. So go on there and it should look like this. So this is something that if you can get it done, that would be great. It's going to give us some information that will help us as we continue to work through our English Language Arts class this year and next year and the rest of high school. So iReady is basically a diagnostic test. It kind of gives us some information as to where you're at within language arts and skills and standards that you will be working on. So it helps you and teachers find out what you know, what you understand currently, and what are the next steps that you should be taking for your learning. So there's going to be questions and that you will answer. So it is a test. It's an assessment. And if you don't know the answer, that's okay. You're not going to necessarily be marked down or anything if you don't know answers. We just need to see where you're at. So think of it as like a pre-test. So normally this would be done through like school time on campus, but because this year is a little crazy, we're going to be doing it at home. So this slideshow should help you figure out how to do that. So don't rush, do your best, read each passage carefully, and then if you don't know the answer, just make your best guess. So if you go through the rest of these slides, this will show you the instructions for how to get logged in. So you're going to use the Clever shortcut on your Chromebook. And if you don't have a Chromebook, if you're using like your own personal computer, you can go to the Salem Keizer website and go to the Clever login. So it should look like that. And then you're going to click on the iReady icon, and then you're going to log in with your district information. And then you're going to click on this ELA diagnostic icon. And then when you're done with the test, you should see something like this. So if you have questions about this, let me know. It's not a high priority, but it is something that we're going to try to get done as much as we can. So that is on Canvas, and that will be something for your asynchronous time. Okay, so what I want you to do, this is going to help me greatly. This is a Google form. You can click the link that's in the slides and it'll take you to it. I need you to fill it out. It'll probably take you like 2 minutes, maybe less, I don't know. It'll give me some information as to kind of what your prior knowledge is about essay writing. I'm not 100% sure what you were taught in middle school, so if you fill this out for me, it'll help me to not be repetitive. It'll help me to make sure I cover the things that will be necessary, skills that you're going to need within essay writing. And I know not everyone is choosing to write the essay for their final project, but we're going to practice a lot of the skills that you'll need because essay writing will definitely be something you'll be working on in your sophomore, junior, and senior year of high school. So take this survey. Okay, next we're going to do some writing prompts to kind of review what you were supposed to read for your asynchronous time. Last week it was chapter 9, 10, and 11. I know it seems like a pretty hefty load, but those chapters are pretty short. So the prompt says, sharing embarrassing moments from one's life requires a sense of vulnerability. What effect does the author, Trevor, what does Trevor's vulnerability have on you as a reader? So he's told lots of different stories, some that are probably a little bit embarrassing to share, stories of things that he did when he was a kid. And I want you to tell me what you think about that. All right, the next question. So Trevor recognized that the one thing that allowed him to feel somewhat like he belonged was humor. He says, "For me, it was humor. I learned that even though I didn't belong to one group, I could be a part of any group that was laughing. I wasn't popular, but I wasn't an outcast. I was everywhere with everybody, and at the same time, I was all by myself." So I want you to think about your own life, and of course, only share whatever you would feel comfortable. But can you relate to not fitting into a particular group or category? If so, why? If not, why? Think about maybe how you could relate or maybe not relate to this situation, because I think that within going to school, especially high school, we kind of, start to figure out who we are and what interests us and what kind of people we want to be around. So give me any thoughts that you have on that quote. Okay, let's do some review. So chapter 9, Trevor is talking about not fitting in. No matter what neighborhood he lived in, white, black, or colored, he didn't really have a spot where he felt like he belonged. And he talks about how the government kind of created these arbitrary rules to define who you were, and maybe that played a part as to why he never really felt like he fit in. They talk about the pencil test on page 119. He says one of the most sinister things about apartheid was that it taught colored people that it was black people who were holding them back. So he talks a lot about how through the government during apartheid, they kind of institutionalized a lot of things that kept people separate, that really fueled a lack of empathy. People did not have empathy for one another. They didn't understand. There was a lot of division going on, and it was all pretty purposeful on the government's part via apartheid. Then he starts talking about there are some older boys nearby who were colored, and they started picking on Trevor and bullying him, the mulberry tree incident. And Trevor told Abel, his stepfather, about it, and he was thinking that he was going to get revenge for him, kind of like a big brother defending him. But what ended up happening was definitely not what Trevor expected. Abel beat up the ringleader bully and made him apologize to Trevor, and Trevor realized that he made a really big mistake in telling Abel about this, because Abel didn't really do anything to stand up for Trevor. He was kind of living out his own anger through this incident. So pretty intense. In chapter 10, this is talking about Valentine's Day at school, and all of Trevor's friends were telling him that he needed to ask out his classmate Marilyn, even though he didn't really care about Valentine's Day. He didn't really understand the concept of it. So they start talking. She says yes to the date. He has his first kiss with her. And then he finds out that there's another student named Lorenzo who decided to ask Marilyn to the dance. And she was like, well, I can't have two Valentines, so I'm going to go with Lorenzo. So he kind of figured that that was his first girlfriend and was a little bit confused at how the whole thing happened. She said it so matter-of-factly that I had no idea how to process it. That was my first time having a girlfriend, so at first I thought, maybe this is just how it goes. So it's a really good chapter, kind of giving some insight into how he processed a very typical coming-of-age event. And then we come to chapter 11, and he's talking about being at, so now he's, growing up a little bit more. He's talking about being in high school and how Sandringham was kind of like a charter school, or what we would know as a charter school. He describes it as a near-perfect microcosm of post-apartheid South Africa as a whole, a perfect example of what South Africa has the potential to be, with the diversity and all the different groups. And he starts talking about kind of his entrepreneurial side of his personality, with being the tuck shop guy and trying to make money, I guess, being a little bit of an entrepreneur at his school with getting food and snacks from the tuck shop. And he kind of used that as a means to be more of a chameleon, a cultural chameleon, where he could fit into any group, but he wouldn't necessarily stay for very long. He'd just kind of float around and move. And then again, bringing us to that humor quote. So that was our chapters that we read. So this week, like I said, we're gonna kind of bounce around a lot. So on our synchronous day, which should be Tuesday and Wednesday, depending on your cohort, we are going to read chapter, oh, sorry, let me fix this real quick. Okay. So Tuesday and Wednesday, we're going to read all of chapter 12. It should take about 13 minutes. And then we are going to be reading the first half of chapter 15, and that will take us about 12 minutes. So the second half of chapter 15 is going to be what you will be reading on your asynchronous time. And then you will also be reading chapter 13. And like I said, I know we're kind of going a little bit out of order, but it's not going to necessarily mess up the story because he bounces around in time anyway. So that's our schedule. So after reading chapter 12, I want you to respond to this prompt. 10 words that might have changed my life if I had the courage to say them, but I hadn't, and now she was gone. So what can you learn from the story? What was an important takeaway? Is there anything that you can relate to or connect with? So go ahead and write your response to that. Chapter 15, after reading that, Trevor uses, or at least the first part, Trevor uses a metaphor to describe how people felt about McDonald's and also how they felt about America. You take your first bite and it blows your mind. It's even better than you imagined. Then halfway through, you realize it's not all it's cracked up to be. A few bites later, you're like, there's a lot wrong with this. Then you're done, you miss it like crazy, and you go back for more. So I want you to tell me, why do you think Trevor is comparing America to eating at McDonald's? I want you to kind of explain your reasoning using evidence from the text. Don't just summarize what he's saying. Give me some thoughts behind why do you think he's comparing these two things? Because if you're going to compare something using a metaphor, analogy, a simile, there has to be a reason that those things are connected. So give me your best shot at that. The next quote for the first half of chapter 15. What he did on a small scale showed me how important it is to empower the dispossessed and the disenfranchised in the wake of oppression. My family had been denied the things his family had taken for granted. I had a natural talent for selling to people, but without knowledge and resources, where was that going to get me? So I want you to tell me, what do you think about this quote? Any thoughts that you have? Do you agree or disagree? Kind of expand on this idea. Tell me what you thought after reading this story, and use evidence from the text. Okay, so as a reminder, this is our asynchronous work, iReady, and then these finishing chapter 15 and reading chapter 13. Okay, day 2, synchronous day 2. So we're going to continue looking at grammar, and we're going to start with punctuation. Punctuation can be so important. It can greatly change the meaning of anything that you're looking at, a sentence, a statement, a whole text. If the punctuation's not correct, if it's misused, it can get really confusing. So it's there for a reason. And let me give you an idea of what I mean. So my lovely mother loves to text me using the voice to text feature on her iPhone. So she literally will talk into her phone, and then it'll record everything she's saying and send a text. And it usually looks like this. And it can be quite frustrating sometimes, because if she's talking for quite a bit, it's a huge chunk of words, and I have to decipher what she's trying to say. So for example, I'll be home in a few minutes. We're going out with the berries tonight, so please make sure the dishes are put away. Bella needs to be taken out for a walk, and her water, food dish need to be refilled. If you could please do this, that would be awesome. Do you remember last night when you were talking about what you need at the store? I need to know what it is because I can't figure it out from my memory. That was all in one breath because there's no punctuation, and it was really frustrating to read that and go, okay, what are you trying to say? So punctuation can transform something that looks like this to this. I'll be home in a few minutes. We're going out with the berries tonight, so please make sure that the dishes are put away. Bella needs to be taken out for a walk. Her water and food dish need to be refilled. If you could do this, or if you could please do this, that would be awesome. Do you remember last night when you were talking about what you need at the store? I need to know what that is because I can't figure it out from my memory. So it totally changes the text. It makes things a lot more simple and easy to understand. So what I want you to do is take a look at this video. This is a TED Ed video on apostrophes. This is the first form of punctuation that we're going to take a look at. So go ahead and watch this. Okay, so some recap. Apostrophes are used for several things: to mark possession, Lucy's robot, showing that somebody has something or owns something. It shows a contraction, don't eat that robot, to show that two words are being put together to make it shorter. So don't is do not. And then to mark the plural of single letters, which this is a little less common, but it does happen. Mind your P's and Q's. So the two main reasons would be to show possession and to show a contraction of two words. So what I want you to do on this slide is look at each of these sentences. It's the same sentence, but there is an apostrophe used differently in each version. And I want you to highlight the sentence that uses the apostrophe correctly. So the sentence says, Mrs. Albritton's favorite MCU character is Steve Rogers. So I want you to look at each one and highlight the one that you think is using an apostrophe correctly. Okay, a little bit more practice. I want you to look at each of these sentences, there's 5 total, and highlight the sentences, so there could be more than one, that uses the apostrophe correctly. So these have different things going on, and all I want you to do is determine which sentence is using an appropriate version of an apostrophe. So the first one, I wouldn't eat broccoli if someone paid me $1,000. I haven't seen you since last summer. Michael Scott isn't as funny as he thinks he is. Hayden's favorite college team has always been the Ducks. Judah's eyes are the same color as Jonathan's. So take a look at each of those and highlight the one that has the correct apostrophe usage. It could be multiple. All right, so it's time to get started on our projects. We're going to be working on several things in class to make you feel supported and to make you feel set up for success. So the first thing is that I want you to have your copy of Patricia's Advice and Golden Lines open on your computer. Those are the 2 assignments that we've been working on as we're going through the reading. So before we actually really get started, the reason I'm asking you to have those 2 things open and out is because we're going to kind of do a little bit of brainstorming to come up with a list of important topics that we think are connected to our essential questions, because those essential questions are grounded in both of our final project options. So you are going to get a handout of this graphic organizer. So if you're absent on Synchronous Day 2, which would either be Thursday or Friday, please let me know and I'll give you a digital copy, or you can wait and get a physical copy when you come back. So the first side is going to be talking about identity. We will do that today or this week. Next week, we will finish the other side, which is empathy. So if you're watching this, you obviously are not in class and don't have the physical copy, but I will be collecting them at the end of the day on Thursday and Friday so that I can give it back to you and we can work on the backside on week 7, next week. So if you go to the next slide, you're going to see an example. I did not fill out the whole thing because I didn't want to steal all the ideas, but I wanted to show you an example of what it'll look like to fill this out. So the topic is going to be the same for everybody. This week we're looking at our first essential question, how identity is shaped by culture and society. So from that topic, you need to think about what are some subtopics, some things that kind of build up to that. So the first one I started with is empowering the disenfranchised. So I'm thinking about this idea and I need to find evidence, details in the text that would support that. So I went back through my notes and found 3 quotes from different sections of the book that support this idea. The Give a Man a Fish analogy on page 190, the Following Their Dreams quote on page 73, and then My Mother Taught Me to Think, page 68. So I just wrote those things down. That's all I'm doing. So again, think about another topic. What else shapes your culture and or what else in culture and society shapes your identity? He talks about multilingualism, so I put that down as a subtopic, and then I start working on filling out those details. So think about what are the things in the book that he talks about that impacted his identity within culture and society. You're going to write those down as the subtopic, and then the details are going to be direct quotes from the text itself. So if you need help with this and you're working on this on your own because you were absent on our Synchronous Day, please let me know. We're going to have more time to practice with this next week, but this is going to give you a lot of good stuff to work with for your final project. Okay, lastly, we have First Chapter Friday. This week we have Rogue Princess by B.R. Myers. This is, I would say, kind of a mix between sci-fi and fantasy. So if you like those types of stories, you'll really like this one. I think you'll also really like it if you are a Star Wars fan, because it definitely has that kind of Star Wars element to it. So the premise of this story is that it's kind of a reverse Cinderella story. So instead of a prince, there's a princess, and she is required to get married in order to, continue the throne and take the throne, as her mother is kind of handing that baton to her. She doesn't want to get married. She's 18 years old. She's really young, and she just wants to do what's right for her planet, her country. But it's really difficult. She meets this boy named Aiden, and he convinces her that he is her bodyguard when in fact he is not. He is just kind of one of the people living on the planet, and he's got some stuff going on in his own life. He has a stepdad and stepbrothers they don't treat him right. He really doesn't like being in that spot. He lost his mother. So again, it's kind of this it's a gender swap reverse story of Cinderella with kind of a Star Wars element to it. So it's pretty good. I don't have the copy of the first chapter linked here, but if you are curious and want to look at it, I have a copy of the book, so just let me know. All right, so just a reminder, this is your asynchronous readings and things to do. If you have any questions, please let me know, but that is it for week 6.